To it. I'm excited. And this evening's District 9 Program Quality Director, Kathy Hansen, shares some thoughts on the aspects of leadership that bring her joy. Her speech, entitled Joys of Leadership, is a manual speech from her 6th go-around of the CC manual, specifically Project 10. Inspire your audience. Timer, the speech will be 10 to 12. And with that, I would love to introduce Kathy.
Well, I discovered this morning in my Facebook memory feed that today is the 5th anniversary of my Toastmasters icebreaker. So it's appropriate that I'm giving a speech tonight, and I'm slightly less terrified than I was 5 years ago. So here we go. Is there anyone in this room who is interested in stepping up into Toastmasters leadership, but is just waiting to be asked? Now, despite the fact that nobody raised their hand, consider yourself asked. Mr. Toastmaster, my peer Toastmasters, and anyone who has ever thought about getting into leadership, this evening, I want to share with you some thoughts about the joys of leadership. I had no intention of pursuing the leadership path in Toastmasters. I've never thought of myself as a leader, and just between us, I still don't. For me, it started with a newsletter. A few months into my Toastmasters experience, our club's VP Public Relations quit. So I thought to myself, hey, I have some skills in that area that I could contribute to my club. So I stepped up as VP PR. That was in January 2011, and I've been a club officer ever since. I started a newsletter for my club that got some attention at the district level. And before I knew it, I was asked to become the district public relations officer. I'm now in my 4th year in district leadership, and as Brad drew out of me, next year, if elected, I will be the big kahuna, the district director. One of the first things I learned about leadership in Toastmasters is that it's not about power. Toastmasters leaders have no power or control over members or clubs. If you've served as an officer, you already know this. What then is leadership in Toastmasters all about? I'm sure we could come up with a massive list of attributes and components of Toastmasters leadership, but I want to focus on 3 that really resonate with me and align with my Toastmasters leadership journey. These 3 aspects of Toastmasters leadership that bring me joy are service to members, becoming more than we are, and creating change through communication. Let's talk about service. In materials disseminated by Toastmasters, you'll find many references to service leadership and servant leadership, which is defined as a philosophy and set of practices that enriches the lives of individuals, builds better organizations, and ultimately creates a more just and caring world. What does that look like? I learned about service to members from one of my mentors, our immediate past district governor, someone that many of you know from her time in Wenatchee, Natalie Palmer. When Natalie walks into a group of people, She is never thinking about her own needs. She is looking for opportunities to serve. Who needs help? What needs to be done? In a crowded room with an awkward layout, she's helping people navigate the room and line up for food. Or she's zeroed in on the sight-impaired member and is guiding him up to the lectern to speak. Leadership, I'm convinced, is at its finest and most satisfying when we look for opportunities to serve other members. When we step up and complete a competent leader evaluation, for example, or become a mentor, we help our peer members meet their goals. Leadership is also about stretching, growing, and challenging ourselves to pursue our own goals and become more than we are. If we step outside our comfort zone and maybe sacrifice a little bit of our precious time, we can discover amazing professional and personal rewards. I learned so much and developed my skills to such a degree in my public relations work in Toastmasters that I was emboldened to apply for a job teaching nonprofit public relations to doctoral students, and I got the job. An amazing opportunity that I never would have had if I hadn't stretched myself in Toastmasters. Leadership is also about creating change through communication. I'm convinced that leadership is not possible without relentless communication. Knowledge is power, as we know. And if we can communicate to our peer members in a way that informs, inspires, and persuades them, we also empower them. I didn't see a great deal of communication to members when I first got into district leadership, but I've become enthralled with the idea of making the district better by communicating to members what they really need to know to have the best possible Toastmasters experience. That's why I'm reasonably comfortable with the reputation I probably have as the most annoying person on the planet who sends all those emails to members. Yes, it's irritating to get lots of emails, but I would much rather have a reputation as an annoying nudge than isolate members in their clubs with no communication about what's going on in the greater Toastmasters world. And leadership communication can do so much more. John F. Kennedy said that there's no point in giving a speech unless it will change the world. A leader who can inspire action through words is the role model that I aspire to. I don't think I can find a better example than Mike Anthony and the speech he gave at our spring conference this year about how his time in Toastmasters clubs in prison changed his life. The evening that Mike gave that speech in the semifinals of the World Championship of Public Speaking in Las Vegas was one of the pinnacles of my Toastmasters experience. Seeing the way Mike's words and delivery inspired the audience and changed people was moving beyond description. People are volunteering in prison clubs and forming new prison clubs because of Mike's speech. That's leadership. Now let's turn back to service to members for a moment. Sometimes providing service to members means taking one for the team. I encourage leaders to take one for the team as long as they're not creating dependency. 3 years ago at the spring conference in Pendleton, which is where our conference is next week, by the way, I was struck by a story told by former International President of Toastmasters, Pat Johnson, who told a story about how she helped a club regain its health. In that club, Pat was the go-to person. She did everything and knew everything. Anytime a question or issue or need came up, the refrain was, "Ask Pat." In other words, the club was dependent on her. So she actually left the club so that it could grow. And the club has thrived ever since. But as long as we avoid generating that kind of dependency, we as aspiring leaders can take one for the team and go the extra mile to help our clubs meet their goals. Perhaps that means working on an education award, or helping with a membership drive, or taking on a contestant or functionary role in a speech contest. I celebrate and appreciate all of you in this room who are going above and beyond. I especially want to celebrate one person who has gone above and beyond and taken many for the team in a way that most leaders don't. Sometimes when we take on the mantle of leadership, we don't know what we're getting into. That's what happened to your own Christina Stepper when she became governor of Division A last year. She had no idea that she would end up with only one area governor and would have to do the work of 3 governors along with her own work. As Lloyd told me, Christina did a remarkable job under difficult circumstances, and she did it with competence and grace. Lloyd also used words such as quiet competence, no drama, and liked by everyone. Those are just a few of the reasons that I am thrilled beyond measure to present to Christina District 9's 2014-2015 Division Governor of the Year Award.
What an honor. Thank you for supporting me and pushing me out the door and saying, you can do this. And Pat was right. Serving in leadership in Toastmasters is a huge honor and privilege. The best part for me was meeting so many great people all across Eastern Washington. I wouldn't trade that for all the mileage and all the almost hitting deer, all the other things. In fact, on Blewett Pass, I have nicknamed semis my deer dozers now, and I stay behind them instead of trying to get around them, let them hit the deer and then I'm back. It was a privilege to serve, and this is such an honor. Thank you so
So, how are we doing on time? I can babble on for a little bit longer and...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what I thought I would do is I wanted to see if anybody had any questions about what's going on in the district, what's going on in Toastmasters in general, any issues you might have, any concerns you might have, and if nobody does have any questions, I do have a handout and I can talk about what's on here, but any questions first?
There was a recent information trickled down from Vicki that they're changing the format of the goals. Thank you.
The Distinguished Club goals?
I mean more along the lines of at the at the floor of the organization on the tracks, the two separate tracks that we have, the leadership.
Oh, the REP.
Yes, we have a revitalized education program coming that we don't know as much about as we would like to. And I think Toastmasters has been fairly deliberate about not releasing a lot of information because they really are committed to making sure it's right before it's released. And, you know, I know a lot of people are really worried about it because they're worried about the education tracks that they're already on. But I'm taking the philosophy that I'm not going to worry about it or really think about it until we have more information. And I'm just going to trust that Toastmasters knows what they're doing and that it really will be a good program. I know that they have worked really hard on it and for a long time, and they delayed the release of it because they want to make sure that they get it right. Interestingly, Pat Johnson, whom I mentioned in the speech, was the driving force behind the Revitalized Education program. So it'll be very interesting to see what it's like, but and you probably know way more about it than I do, Vicki, because you're an ambassador, right?
Probably about as much as you do. I think they gave you information at the international conference, and it wasn't much from what I hear from Ed, but.
Yeah, it really was not. And both years that I've gone to the convention, I have expected to hear more and really have heard very, very little. Right.
So no ETAs on that rollout then at this point, when it's ready?
I believe they're saying next year,
Okay.
and there will also be a 2-year overlap.
Right.
So that's why it's another reason not to be worried about the path that you're on currently. You should be able to finish up whatever you're doing before you get into your revised role. Good.
Is the realignment that was sprung on everybody just before the contest going to be revisited? The reason I ask is in our region, it produced a couple of really strange results.
Yeah.
One of them is that Moses Lake is in with 3 prison clubs as an area. The other one is that Area A1 has the 2 clubs here in Wenatchee plus Ellensburg, which makes sense, but also plucked one of the clubs in Yakima out.
Yes, the alignment, which is basically how clubs are configured into areas and divisions. We had 3 problems with the alignment this year. Number one, the original alignment had flaws and problems, and also we didn't really follow the correct process to put it in place. And some of the problems largely were about prison clubs, and we were very concerned about losing the prison clubs. We have 9 prison clubs in our district, and they comprise 13% of the prison clubs in the world. So we have an unusually large population of prison clubs, especially for a small district. We're the 3rd smallest district in the world. So they're very important to us, and they're also very high performing. Most of them are President's Distinguished every year, so we don't want to lose them, and that was a big concern of the original alignment. Unfortunately, the alignment that was intended to fix that probably had just as many problems. And we are voting to ratify that alignment at next week's conference, but I think that it would cause far more problems than it would solve if we tried to change it at this point. But I guarantee that we are going to do it right next year, and we're going to address all those problems and try to come up with it. We will probably never have an alignment that will please everybody, but we're going to get as close to that as we possibly can. Anything else?
Yes, I have heard that there's going to be a change in how we have officer training, that
to make it more convenient so that we don't have to travel such long distances.
I
Do you
am
know
so
about that?
glad you brought that up. It really is a big challenge in a district like ours that's very spread out. And we are very spread out, but if you look at some of the other districts in the world, they face challenges that are way bigger than ours. For example, having all of Europe as a district and having the Caribbean as a district where you can't do area visits without getting on an airplane. So, we do have our challenges, but they aren't as severe as some of the other districts. So we really have been working to try to come up with an optimal configuration for officer training. And I have to say that Wenatchee presents a particular issue because as Lloyd has pointed out, you're kind of isolated and you're not really near anything. And I can definitely relate to that, being in a club that is 2 hours from the nearest club. So for my entire 5 years of Toastmasters experience, I and all of the people in my club, when we go to a contest, a training, a conference, any Toastmasters event, it's always at least 2 hours away. So I'm very sympathetic to that. When I set up the first round of officer training this summer, I specifically had Wenatchee in mind because I know that folks from Wenatchee have not wanted to drive long distances, especially in the winter. So one of the solutions there was to switch our biggest training, our Toastmasters Leadership Institute, to summer so that we would eliminate the winter driving issue. And then what I tried to do was put it in a place where folks from Wenatchee would not object to coming, which was Moses Lake. I chose Moses Lake because we have our district officer training in Moses Lake every year because it has been determined that that's the most centralized location in the district. Unfortunately, folks from Wenatchee, generally speaking, with a couple of exceptions, maybe 3, didn't really seem to like that Moses Lake location. So, Victoria stepped up and did a local training. There were another local training in Yakima, but I'm still not really sure what the solution is for Wenatchee. So I would kind of like to hear your input. Where would you be willing to go?
Well, Kathy, people in Wenatchee complain about driving to East Wenatchee. So you're never going to win that one.
Is there a
They
chance for
complain about driving to Waterfield.
Toastmasters does not allow virtual training at this time. I think that they will soon, since they will also soon allow virtual clubs. We did ask for an exception a couple of years ago and we were turned down. I think that we could try asking again, especially since there is a more open attitude toward virtual stuff, so I will definitely do that. But in the meantime, what about Ellensburg? Would you go to Ellensburg?
Sure.
I went to the Moses Lake one a few years ago. It was no more or less inconvenient than going to any of the other clear options like Yakima, or it's actually closer than Yakima.
That's closer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's probably the same distance from
Ellensburg and Moses Lake would probably be about the same distance, wouldn't it? That's similar.
Yeah.
I thought Moses Lake wasn't that bad. Lloyd and I carpooled and had a nice visit and saw a moose and.
Moose?
Yeah, on the White Trail Road.
Really?
I
Full-grown
was
adult
thinking
moose.
Ellensburg might be good because it's sort of between Yakima and Wenatchee,
Right.
although it's
Oh,
closer to
yeah.
Yakima. Anyway, I'm probably around the end of my time, but please think about that. think about where you'd be willing to go. And of course, we can have training here as well, but we want to try to have it in places where we can get the most people. So do think about that. I really want to accommodate you, but have to accommodate everybody else as well, so.
Have it in Leavenworth during Oktoberfest.
Oh, yeah.
Would it be possible to tie it in with a conference, at least the fall term?
Probably not, because the deadline for first round training is August 31st.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to pass these around. This is opportunities to serve, learn, and grow in District 9, things that you might not know about that you can get involved with and do and contribute. Pass those around.